The thunder cracked overhead as Sophia Bennett clutched her worn leather valise, the stagecoach jostling violently beneath her. At 19, she had never imagined her father would sell her hand in marriage to settle a gambling debt. Yet here she was traveling to Dry Creek, Colorado, to wed a man she'd never met. The year was 1875, and the West was as wild as the rumors that had reached her Philadelphia home. Sophia's father, once a respected businessman, had fallen into disrepute after her mother's death 3 years prior. His gambling and drinking had escalated until that fateful night when he'd wagered more than he could pay. "Almost there, miss," the driver called down, his voice barely audible over the drumming rain and clattering wheels. Sophia nodded, though no one could see her. The other passengers, a traveling salesman and an elderly couple, had disembarked at the previous stop. She was alone with her thoughts and the letter in her pocket. The paper was creased from repeated readings, the ink smudged by her tears. "To my daughter Sophia," it began. "I have arranged your marriage to Mr. Whitfield of Dry Creek, Colorado. He has agreed to forgive my substantial debt in exchange for your hand. A room has been reserved for you at the Silver Dollar Hotel. The wedding is set for Sunday. Your loving father." Loving. The word made her stomach turn. The stagecoach lurched to a halt, and Sophia was thrown forward. She steadied herself as the door swung open, revealing the muddy main street of Dry Creek. "Here we are, miss." "Dry Creek," the driver said with irony as rain poured down around them. With trembling hands, Sophia gathered her belongings. The driver helped her down, and she stood in the downpour, her blue traveling dress quickly becoming sodden. The Silver Dollar Hotel loomed across the street, its windows glowing with warm lamplight that seemed to mock her cold predicament. The driver tipped his hat. "Good luck to you, miss." Something in his tone suggested he knew her circumstances, and pity shone in his weathered face. Sophia lifted her chin. "Thank you." She would not appear broken, even if she felt that way inside. The hotel lobby was mercifully empty except for a balding man behind the desk who barely looked up from his ledger as she approached. "I am Sophia Bennett," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "I believe a room has been arranged for me." The clerk glanced up, recognition dawning in his eyes. "Yes, miss. Mr. Whitfield has taken care of everything." He handed her a key. "Room 3, upstairs on the left." "Mr. Whitfield, is he here?" she asked, uncertain whether to hope for a meeting or dread it. "No, miss. He's at his ranch outside town. Said he'd meet you at the church on Sunday." The clerk's eyes held the same pity she'd seen in the driver's. Sophia nodded and made her way upstairs. The room was small but clean, with a narrow bed, washstand, and window overlooking the muddy street. She placed her valise on the bed and finally allowed herself to cry. 2 days. She had 2 days of freedom before becoming Mrs. Whitfield. The morning brought sunshine, and with it, a measure of determination. Sophia had spent a restless night contemplating escape, but reality had set in with the dawn. She had no money, no friends in this territory, and nowhere to go. Her father had ensured her compliance by leaving her with no alternatives. After dressing in her second-best dress, a simple brown cotton with modest lace at the collar, she ventured downstairs. The dining room was half full, and she felt eyes following her as she took a table near the window. "You must be the Whitfield bride," a friendly voice said. Sophia looked up to see a plump woman with kind eyes setting down a cup of coffee. "I am Martha," the woman continued. "I run the kitchen here. Everyone's talking about you." Sophia's cheeks warmed. "Yes, I suppose they would be." "Don't you worry about old Whitfield," Martha said, lowering her voice. "He's not as bad as some. At least he's got money, and he's only hit one of his ranch hands that I know of." The coffee turned bitter on Sophia's tongue. How reassuring. Martha patted her shoulder sympathetically and moved away to serve other customers. Sophia gazed out the window at the bustling main street. Dry Creek was larger than she'd expected, a proper frontier town with a general store, saloon, blacksmith, and several other businesses. People moved with purpose, nodding to one another as they passed. It could have been a pleasant place under different circumstances. The door to the hotel swung open, and a tall man in dusty riding clothes entered. His dark hair curled beneath his hat, and his face was tanned from the sun. Something about his confident stride made Sophia look twice. He removed his hat as he approached the counter. revealing startlingly blue eyes that scanned the room and landed on her. For a moment, their gazes locked, and Sophia felt an unexpected flutter in her chest. Then the man turned away, speaking to the clerk. "That's Isaac Zimmerman," Martha whispered, appearing at Sophia's elbow with a plate of eggs and bacon. "Best horse breeder in the territory. Shame about his pa's place being so close to Whitfield's. Those two have been feuding for years." Sophia couldn't help but glance at the stranger again. What do they feud about? Water rights, mostly. The creek that runs through both their properties. Whitfield dammed it up last summer, nearly ruined Zimmerman's horses. Martha clucked her tongue. Isaac's been fighting him in court, but Whitfield's got the judge in his pocket. The stranger Isaac finished his business and turned to leave. As he passed Sophia's table, he tipped his hat politely. "Madam," he said, his voice deep and melodious. "Sir," Sophia replied, feeling strangely flustered. After he left, Sophia found her appetite had returned. She ate while watching the town come to life, formulating a plan. She might be forced into this marriage, but she would not go in blind. Today, she would learn everything she could about Mr. Whitfield and Dry Creek. The general store proved to be a wealth of information. The proprietor, Mr. Jenkins, was more than happy to talk as Sophia pretended to browse the shelves. "Whitfield? Oh, he's one of the biggest ranchers in the county. Came out here 15 years ago with nothing but a wagon and a dream, so they say. Now he's got 3,000 acres and a house that would make Denver society jealous." Mr. Jenkins leaned in. "Between you and me, miss, there's talk about how he got so prosperous so quick. Some say not all his cattle wear his brand, if you take my meaning." Sophia nodded, picking up a tin of hard candies. "And his temperament?" Mr. Jenkins hesitated. "Well, he's a businessman through and through. Doesn't suffer fools or competition." He glanced around and lowered his voice. "His first wife passed 5 years back. Fell down the stairs, they say." Sophia's blood ran cold. "I see. But I'm sure he'll treat you right, miss," Jenkins added hastily. "A young lady like yourself from back east, he'll be wanting to show you off." Sophia purchased the candies and left, her mind racing. The more she learned, the more desperate her situation seemed. As she walked back toward the hotel, a commotion down the street caught her attention. A crowd had gathered outside the saloon, and raised voices carried on the afternoon air. Curiosity drew her closer. In the center of the crowd stood Isaac Zimmerman, facing a red-faced older man with a prominent belly and an expensive suit. Even without an introduction, Sophia knew this must be Whitfield. "You've crossed the line this time, Zimmerman," Whitfield was saying, his jowls quivering with rage. "Those cattle were on my land." "Your land?" Isaac responded, his voice controlled but tight with anger. "That section belongs to the Parkers, and you know it. You're the one who moved the boundary markers. Are you calling me a thief, boy?" Whitfield's hand hovered near the pistol at his hip. The crowd tensed, and Sophia found herself holding her breath. Isaac's eyes flicked to Whitfield's gun, then back to his face. "I'm calling you a man who doesn't know where his property ends and others begins," Isaac said carefully. "And I'm telling you to stay off Parker land and leave their cattle alone." A tall man with a silver star pinned to his vest stepped between them. "That's enough, both of you. Whitfield, if you've got a complaint, file it properly. And keep your hand away from that gun unless you want to spend the night in my jail." Whitfield glared at the sheriff, then at Isaac. "This isn't over, Zimmerman. It never is with you," Isaac replied evenly. The crowd began to disperse as Whitfield stomped away. Sophia pressed herself against the wall of the general store, hoping to avoid being seen. But as Whitfield passed, his gaze fell on her, and recognition dawned on his face. Well, he said, stopping in front of her. "You must be Sophia Bennett." Sophia straightened her spine and met his gaze. "Mr. Whitfield, I presume." He was in his 50s, with gray streaking his dark hair and deep lines etched around his mouth, not from smiling, she guessed. His eyes were cold as they assessed her, like a rancher evaluating livestock. "You'll do," he said finally. "Your father said you were pretty enough, and he was right. We'll be married on Sunday as planned. I've arranged everything with the preacher." He reached out and took her chin between his thumb and forefinger, turning her face to the light. "Yes, you'll do nicely." It took all of Sophia's willpower not to recoil from his touch. "I look forward to becoming better acquainted before the ceremony," she managed to say. Whitfield laughed, a harsh sound without humor. No need for that. There'll be plenty of time to get acquainted after you're my wife. He released her chin. I've got business to attend to. My housekeeper will collect you on Sunday morning. With that, he continued down the street, leaving Sophia trembling with a mixture of fear and anger. Are you all right, madam? She turned to find Isaac Zimmerman watching her with concern in his blue eyes. Yes, thank you, she said automatically, then shook her head. No, not really. Isaac stepped closer, his expression softening. That's the first honest answer I've heard in this town for a while. He gestured toward a bench outside the general store. Would you like to sit down? You look a bit pale. Sophia hesitated, then nodded. They sat in silence for a moment, watching the townspeople go about their business. You're Whitfield's bride-to-be, Isaac said finally. It wasn't a question. Not by choice, Sophia replied, surprising herself with her candor. My father arranged it to settle a debt. Isaac's jaw tightened. That sounds like Whitfield. Treating people like property to be traded. I have no choice, Sophia said quietly. I have nowhere else to go, no money of my own. Isaac studied her face. There are always choices, Miss Bennett. Some are just harder than others. Before Sophia could respond, the sheriff approached them, his expression stern. Zimmerman, I'd advise against getting friendly with Whitfield's fiancé. That man holds grudges, and you're already on his bad side. Isaac stood. Just being neighborly, Sheriff Davis. The sheriff looked at Sophia. Miss, you might want to head back to the hotel. Tongues wag in small towns. Sophia rose, brushing dust from her skirt. Thank you for your concern, Sheriff. Mr. Zimmerman was simply being kind after my encounter with Mr. Whitfield. Sheriff Davis sighed. Just be careful, both of you. He tipped his hat and walked away. I should go, Sophia said, though she found herself reluctant to leave Isaac's company. Miss Bennett, Isaac said as she turned to go. If you ever need help, my ranch is north of town. Just follow the creek upstream. Their eyes met, and something unspoken passed between them, a connection that both thrilled and frightened her. Thank you, Mr. Zimmerman, she said softly. But I don't think anyone can help me now. She returned to the hotel, her thoughts in turmoil. Meeting Whitfield had only confirmed her worst fears, but meeting Isaac had awakened something else, a dangerous hope. Saturday passed in a blur of anxiety. Sophia alternated between pacing her small room and sitting by the window, watching the town and contemplating her fate. Martha brought up meals and tried to cheer her with local gossip, but Sophia could barely focus on the woman's kind efforts. As the sun set on her last night of freedom, Sophia made a decision. She couldn't marry Whitfield. Even if it meant facing an uncertain future as a woman alone in the West, it would be better than life with a man whose cold eyes promised nothing but misery. She waited until the hotel grew quiet, then packed her few belongings. The money her father had given her for the journey was nearly gone, but she had enough for a stagecoach ticket to the next town. From there, she would have to find work, perhaps as a teacher or seamstress. The clock downstairs struck midnight as Sophia crept down the back stairs and slipped out into the alley behind the hotel. The night was clear and cool, stars blazing overhead in a way they never did in Philadelphia. She took a deep breath of the mountain air and started toward the stagecoach office. She hadn't gone more than a block when a figure stepped out of the shadows. Going somewhere, Miss Bennett? Sophia gasped, clutching her valise to her chest. But it wasn't Whitfield who stood before her, it was Isaac Zimmerman. Mr. Zimmerman, you startled me. My apologies, he said, stepping into the moonlight. I couldn't sleep and was taking a walk. But it seems you're doing more than just walking. Sophia hesitated, then decided honesty was her only option. I'm leaving. I cannot marry that man. Isaac nodded, as if he'd expected this. Where will you go? I don't know. Somewhere he won't find me. He'll look, Isaac warned. Whitfield doesn't like losing what he considers his property. I am not property, Sophia said fiercely. A smile touched Isaac's lips. No, you certainly are not. He seemed to consider something, then made a decision. Come with me. I have a proposition for you. Sophia took a step back. Sir, I hardly know you. Not that kind of proposition, Isaac said quickly. I would never, he ran a hand through his hair. Look, Whitfield and I have been enemies for years. He's trying to drive me off my land, and he's not above using underhanded methods. If you disappeared now, he'd blame me anyway. What are you suggesting? Come to my ranch. I have a cabin where my foreman used to live before he got married and moved to town. You can stay there while you decide what to do next. It would give you time to think, and it would infuriate Whitfield, which I admit is an added benefit. Sophia studied his face in the moonlight. There was something sincere in his expression that made her want to trust him. Why would you help me? Isaac was quiet for a moment. Because no one should be forced into marriage. And because I've seen what kind of man Whitfield is. He held out his hand. What do you say, Miss Bennett? It's your choice. Choice. The word resonated through her. This was perhaps the first real choice she'd been given in months. Lead the way, Mr. Zimmerman, she said, placing her hand in his. They left town on Isaac's horse, Sophia seated behind him, her arms wrapped tentatively around his waist. As they rode through the night, he told her about his ranch, the horses he bred, the small herd of cattle he maintained, and the ongoing water dispute with Whitfield. My father built that ranch from nothing, Isaac explained as they followed a narrow trail through pine woods. He came west after the war with nothing but determination and a talent for horses. By the time he died 2 years ago, the Z-Bar was known throughout the territory for the finest horses you could buy. And then Whitfield began causing trouble? Sophia asked, her voice close to his ear. He's always been trouble, but it got worse after Pa died. He thought he could intimidate me into selling. Isaac's voice hardened. He doesn't know me very well. The trail opened up, and in the moonlight, Sophia could see a valley spread before them. A creek glimmered silver, cutting through pasture land. In the distance, buildings took shape: a large house, a barn, and several smaller structures. Welcome to the Z-Bar, Isaac said with pride in his voice. As they approached, Sophia could see the ranch was well maintained but simpler than she had imagined. The main house was built of logs with a wide porch, and the barn was freshly painted. Everything spoke of care and hard work rather than ostentation. Isaac helped her down from the horse in front of a small cabin set apart from the main house. This is where you can stay. It's not fancy, but it's clean and comfortable. Inside, the cabin was indeed simple: one room with a bed, table, 2 chairs, and a small stove. A curtain partitioned off a washing area. Isaac lit a lamp, and warm light filled the space. I'll bring you some food from the house, he said. And tomorrow we can figure out what to do. Sophia set down her valise and turned to him. Mr. Zimmerman, I don't know how to thank you. Isaac, he corrected gently. And you don't need to thank me. Anyone with a conscience would have done the same. But as their eyes met in the lamplight, Sophia knew that wasn't true. Not everyone would risk Whitfield's wrath to help a stranger. There was something special about this man with the kind blue eyes and determined jaw. Isaac, she said softly, testing his name on her lips. Thank you. He smiled, and it transformed his face, creating crinkles around his eyes that spoke of laughter and joy despite the hardships he'd faced. Get some rest, Sophia. You're safe here. The use of her given name sent a strange thrill through her. As he left to fetch food, Sophia looked around the cabin and, for the first time since receiving her father's letter, felt a glimmer of hope. Sunday morning dawned bright and clear, Sophia's wedding day, though she would not be walking down the aisle. She had slept better than expected in the foreman's cabin, lulled by the night sounds of the ranch and the knowledge that she was, at least temporarily, beyond Whitfield's reach. A knock at the door roused her fully. She quickly dressed and opened it to find Isaac holding a tray with coffee and breakfast. Good morning, he said, his smile warm. I thought you might be hungry. That's very kind. Thank you. They sat at the small table by the window as Sophia ate the simple but delicious meal of eggs, bacon, and biscuits. What happens now? She asked, setting down her coffee cup. Whitfield will be looking for me. Isaac nodded, his expression turning serious. The sheriff will likely ride out here first. Whitfield will assume I had something to do with your disappearance. I'm sorry to bring trouble to your door. Don't be, Isaac said firmly. I've been dealing with Whitfield's trouble for years. This is just one more chapter in our ongoing saga. Sophia studied him across the table. In the morning light, she could see details she'd missed before: a small scar along his jawline, the way one lock of his dark hair fell stubbornly across his forehead, the strength in his hands as he held his coffee cup. Tell me about your horses, she said, wanting to know more about him and his life. Isaac's face lit up as he described his breeding program, the bloodlines he was developing, and the reputation he'd built. His passion was evident in every word, and Sophia found herself drawn to his enthusiasm and integrity. Their conversation was interrupted by the sound of approaching horses. Isaac rose and looked out the window. "Sheriff Davis," he said grimly, "and it looks like he's brought company." Sophia joined him at the window. The sheriff was riding up to the main house, accompanied by two other men, one of whom was Whitfield. Her heart sank. "What should we do?" she asked. Isaac straightened his shoulders. "I'll talk to them. You stay here." "No," Sophia said firmly. "This is my fight too. I won't hide while you face them alone." Their eyes met, and something passed between them: respect, understanding, and perhaps something more. "All right," Isaac conceded. "But let me do the talking at first." They walked together to the main house, where the three men were dismounting. Whitfield's face contorted with rage when he saw Sophia. "There she is," he bellowed. "I knew you'd taken her, Zimmerman." The sheriff held up a hand. "Calm down, Whitfield. Let's hear what they have to say." Isaac stepped forward. "Miss Bennett came here of her own free will, Sheriff. She wasn't kidnapped or coerced. Is that true, miss?" Sheriff Davis asked, his eyes kind but concerned. Sophia lifted her chin. "Absolutely. I could not go through with the marriage my father arranged. Mr. Zimmerman kindly offered me sanctuary while I decided what to do next." Whitfield's face purpled. "This is ridiculous. We had an agreement. Her father owes me money. That's between you and my father," Sophia said coldly. "I am not a possession to be traded to settle a debt." The third man, whom Sophia didn't recognize, cleared his throat. "Actually, I believe I can help clarify matters." He stepped forward, a leather portfolio in his hands. "I'm Jasper Reynolds, attorney at law. I represent the territorial court." Whitfield scowled. "What's this about, Reynolds?" "I didn't ask for a lawyer." "No, but Judge Morrison did," Reynolds replied calmly. He extracted several papers from his portfolio. "Mr. Whitfield, these are warrants for your arrest on charges of fraud, cattle rustling, and witness intimidation." A stunned silence fell over the group. Whitfield's face drained of color, then flushed dark red. "This is Zimmerman's doing," he spluttered. "More lies to try to ruin me." "Actually," Reynolds continued, "these charges result from an investigation that's been ongoing for several months. Multiple witnesses have come forward, including your former foreman, Mr. Parker, whose family's cattle you've been stealing." Sheriff Davis's expression hardened. "Is this true, Reynolds?" "I'm afraid so, Sheriff. Judge Morrison has reviewed the evidence and found it compelling enough to issue these warrants." Reynolds handed the papers to Davis. "You're authorized to take Mr. Whitfield into custody immediately." The sheriff turned to Whitfield, whose hand was inching toward his gun. "Don't try it, Whitfield. It'll only make things worse." For a tense moment, Sophia thought Whitfield might draw anyway. But then his shoulders slumped, and the fight seemed to go out of him. "This isn't over," he muttered as Sheriff Davis handcuffed him. "I believe it is," Reynolds contradicted mildly. "The evidence is quite overwhelming. You'll be facing a considerable prison sentence." As the sheriff led Whitfield to his horse, the rancher turned and spat in Isaac's direction. "You've been waiting for this, haven't you, Zimmerman? Well, enjoy it while you can. I still have friends." Isaac remained impassive. "Justice has been a long time coming, Whitfield. That's all." After the three men rode away, with Whitfield securely in custody, Sophia and Isaac stood in silence, processing what had just happened. "Did you know about the investigation?" Sophia finally asked. Isaac shook his head. "I knew something was happening. People in town have been talking, but I had no idea it would come to a head today." He looked at her with a mixture of relief and uncertainty. "This changes things for you. With Whitfield facing prison, you're free of any obligation your father might have tried to impose." "Yes," Sophia said slowly. "I suppose I am." The realization washed over her. She was truly free now, free to make her own choices, to determine her own future. The possibilities were both exhilarating and frightening. "What will you do?" Isaac asked, his voice carefully neutral. Sophia looked around at the ranch, at the mountains rising in the distance, at the man standing before her. In just 2 days, this place had begun to feel more like home than Philadelphia ever had. "I don't know," she admitted. "I have no money, no position, no family to return to." "You could stay," Isaac said, the words coming out in a rush. "Not in the foreman's cabin unless you want to, of course. But Dry Creek needs a schoolteacher." The last one left 6 months ago to get married, and the children have been without proper education since then. Hope bloomed in Sophia's chest. A schoolteacher? I could do that. I finished at the Fairmont Academy for Young Ladies in Philadelphia. I've always loved learning. The town council would be thrilled, Isaac said, his eyes lighting up. And you could board with Martha at the hotel until you found a more permanent arrangement. That sounds wonderful, Sophia said, genuinely excited by the prospect. Then she glanced at Isaac. But what about you? Whitfield said he still has friends. Will you be safe? Isaac's expression softened. Concerned about me, Miss Bennett? Sophia, she corrected, echoing his words from the night before. And yes, I find that I am concerned. He stepped closer, his blue eyes searching hers. Whitfield's threats are empty. His allies will scatter now that he's facing serious charges. The Z-Bar is secure, and for the first time in years, I can focus on building rather than just defending what my father created. They stood close now, the morning sun casting a golden glow around them. Sophia was acutely aware of Isaac's presence, his height, the clean scent of soap and leather that surrounded him, the way his eyes crinkled at the corners when he smiled. Would it be improper, Isaac said softly, if I called on you in town? Perhaps escort you to dinner at the hotel? Sophia felt a blush rising in her cheeks. Not improper at all. I would like that very much. Good, he said, his smile broadening. Because I find, Sophia Bennett, that I'm not ready to say goodbye to you just yet. In the weeks that followed, Sophia settled into life in Dry Creek. The town council eagerly appointed her as the new schoolteacher, providing a small but comfortable room at the back of the schoolhouse as part of her compensation. The children were eager to learn, and Sophia found fulfillment in nurturing their minds. Isaac called on her regularly, often bringing small gifts, wildflowers, books from his father's library, once even a beautiful hair ribbon he'd bought on a trip to Denver. Their courtship was proper but filled with growing affection and deepening connection. On a warm evening in June, nearly 3 months after her arrival in Dry Creek, Isaac invited Sophia for a picnic by the creek that ran through his property. The water dispute with Whitfield had been resolved in Isaac's favor, and the creek flowed freely again, nurturing both ranches. They sat on a blanket beneath a cottonwood tree, the remains of their meal packed away, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. I received a letter from my father yesterday, Sophia said, breaking a comfortable silence. Isaac turned to her, concern in his eyes. What did he say? He apologized, she said, still somewhat surprised by this fact. He said he's given up gambling and drinking. He's working as a clerk in a law office now. She paused. He asked if I could ever forgive him. And can you? Isaac asked gently. Sophia considered this. I think so. Not right away, perhaps, but eventually. His actions were terrible, but they led me here. She looked at Isaac. And I can't regret where I am now. Isaac's face softened with emotion. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. I had planned a more eloquent speech, he said, his voice slightly unsteady. But the moment seems right. He opened the box to reveal a simple gold ring with a small pearl. Sophia Bennett, I have come to love you with all my heart. Your courage, your kindness, your strength, everything about you has captured me completely. Would you do me the extraordinary honor of becoming my wife? Tears welled in Sophia's eyes as joy flooded through her. Yes, Isaac. Yes, I will marry you. With reverent hands, Isaac slipped the ring onto her finger, then raised her hand to his lips and placed a kiss there. Mine, he whispered against her skin, his eyes holding hers with a look of such love and devotion that it took her breath away. Yours, she agreed, her heart overflowing. By choice, not by arrangement. By love, not by transaction. Their wedding took place in the fall, when the aspen trees turned golden and the mountains were painted with color. The entire town turned out for the ceremony, celebrating the union of the respected horse breeder and their beloved schoolteacher. As they exchanged vows in the small church, Sophia thought of how differently things might have turned out. What had begun as a forced marriage to a stranger had transformed into a love deeper and truer than anything she could have imagined. Later, at the reception held at the Z-Bar, Isaac pulled her aside for a moment of privacy on the porch of what was now their home. Happy? He asked, his arms encircling her waist. Completely, she answered, leaning into his embrace. "Do you know what today is?" "Our wedding day," he replied with a smile. "Yes, but it's also exactly 6 months since I arrived in Dry Creek, expecting the worst day of my life." She touched his cheek tenderly. Instead, it became the beginning of the best days. Isaac captured her hand and kissed the ring he had placed there. "Mine," he whispered again, the word a promise rather than a possession. Sophia smiled up at her husband, her heart full of gratitude for the twist of fate that had brought her west, and for the man who had shown her what real love could be. "Yours," she replied. "Always."